So I'd like to introduce our speakers today. We have Lori Knight, the Education Outreach Manager for TWC. We have Brooke Bolterman, Career Education Outreach Specialist for Workforce Solutions of West Central Texas. Shannon Scriven, Career Education Outreach Specialist for Workforce Solutions Capital Area. Charley Ayres, Director of Industry Education Partnerships. Workforce Solutions of Central Texas. Norma Ochoa, Director of Business and Education Engagement. And Luis Rodriguez, Career and Education Outreach Specialist, Workforce Solutions of Coastal Bend. And David Gutierrez, Education Relations Supervisor, Workforce Solutions, Lower Rio Grande Valley.
So good morning, everyone. I hope everyone slept well, and I hope you're ready to enjoy the second day of the conference. So I'm Lori Knight. I do manage the state level education outreach team as well as the program as far as our team onboarding all the new specialists that join our network and keeping us working in partnership and collaborating quite regularly. So I want to talk a little bit about what education outreach does, who our customers are, and we'll talk about also where we're located in a moment. Excuse me. But just to give you an idea of the work that we do. So essentially, our teams go out into schools and we're working with students, parents, faculty, and that could be the educators as well as the counselors and any staff, administration staff, and that's at the district level all the way to the regional level. We are intermediaries often we're the folks who bring industry and employers and education together. And essentially what we do is we provide presentations, we're facilitating workshops. In many cases, we're just attending career fairs. We do over the summer professional development, a lot of professional development with teachers and counselors. And in many cases, a lot of our members are working with students one-on-one. And our job is to work in tandem with the academic advisors on campuses. We are the folks who provide career development guidance. So we're not there to take away from what the counselor is doing. We're there to supplement the work, and we work in tandem with them as well. Essentially, our focus is to make sure that students all across the state of Texas are career ready. We want them to explore all of the options available to them based on their interests, but also we do a lot of assessments with the kids and we help them to learn how they can connect talents and interests and values to the world of work. Our ultimate goal is to help students make better informed decisions about what they choose to do beyond the high school arena. So we always like to give them the options, tell them everything that's available, and just let them know they need to be willing to commit to education or training beyond a high school diploma in order to thrive and succeed in the world of work for the future. So for right now, we started in 2019 with 7 pilot teams. So our 7 pilot teams are the teams up here. I listed them alphabetically. And those 7 teams, we worked together for a 2-year pilot. In 2021, we opened up the option to join the network to all 28 boards. These teams are housed in our workforce board offices. Some of them contract employees, some of them employees of the board. It all really depends. The boards have the autonomy to choose how they want to operate. But in 2021, we had 7 additional teams decide to join the network, and all 7 of our pilots decided to stay, which is great. So this kind of shows you where we're located. I'm going to back up a little and say that officially TWC started doing education outreach work back in 2014. And I say officially in quotes because I know youth programs have been operating out of boards for a very long time and working with students. But we put a label on it at the state level, right? And we had specific education outreach to work with students for the first time. And House Bill 5 was the impetus of that, really. They wanted us out there to have conversations with students about their endorsements and how their high school academics connected to pathways beyond high school. But then we realized very quickly that when we had this captive audience of students, we could do so much more for the economy, for the industry and employers in the areas to help them find good talent. And working with CTE, specifically a lot of CTE programs in the ISDs, we were able to really make a lot of connections. And so our team started to grow. We decided in 2019 under the leadership of Commissioner Ayres to see if we could replicate what we were doing at the state level within the regions. And we knew that it would be way more impactful and that the regional teams could really set roots and deep partnerships with their schools. And so they've done a lot of exciting things, and I'm gonna let them talk about that in a minute. But I do want to kind of just let you know what our impact has looked like. Now, keep in mind, this is the data just from since the 2019 pilot, and this is the data around what our regional teams have been doing. So those 7 teams in 2 years, and keep in mind, this is during the time of COVID, and we had a full stop on having access to our students at the state level. What was great about the partnerships with the regional teams is that many of them were already considered part of the district. And so when the districts reopened and students started to come back, they were considered important staff too. They had their IDs and they could get on staff. For us at the state level, our travel pretty much stopped. We did not have access to students because we were considered support, or we were considered visitors. But these teams were able to build these really robust and great partnerships, and so they got to get right back into the schools too. So overall attendance, there's lots of data really that we collect, and I'm giving you a very high level of what we've done. But if you would like to get in the weeds of this data or have conversations about what our teams are doing, I am more than happy to have a conversation with anybody and share our data. But overall, in those 2 years, our 7 pilot teams had over 620,000 students attend some sort of event that they were facilitating. And again, that could have been a presentation, a workshop, attending a career fair, or having one-on-one meetings with these folks. Attendance, again, students, parents, counselors, administrators, it runs the gamut. We also count our social media impact with students too. So when we have social media messaging, not all of the teams do it. We also keep track of how many folks are in that social media campaign, but then also how many are interacting with us through social media as well. And that's the difference between attendance and engagement. Engagement is of the people who attended our sessions, how many of us did we have one-on-one conversations with? Did we provide information to? Did we sit down and have a talk to? And of the 620,000 that we had exposure to, we engaged with over 415,000 individuals. That's a lot in 2 years. But essentially we provided total sessions, individual sessions, we count them, 14,656. It's quite a lot, for 7 teams in 2 years. So needless to say, we are busy. But there are very specific conversations that we like to track as well. So we don't just, count the head count of, who we have interactions with. We want to know that those interactions are meaningful, they're purposeful, and that we are talking about really important information with them. So one of the conversations we always track is, are we having the conversation about post-secondary options? And when I say post-secondary options, I'm talking everything, right? Because any student on any campus across the state of Texas already knows about go to college and get that 4-year degree, right? But not all of them are aware of other options like apprenticeship, military, workforce training through their either workforce solution offices or at community colleges, technical schools. And so we talk to them about everything. We run the gamut. We also talk to them about how to finance those different options. So of the tons of students and folks that we talked to, specifically when the conversation was around post-secondary options, it was over 270,000 people. We also talk about career readiness training, and that could vary from how to write a resume, preparing and practicing job interviewing skills. We talk about soft skills. Again, you name it, if it's under that umbrella of career readiness, we're having that conversation with them. Sometimes it's also just telling an 8th grader what CTE pathways are available at their high school. So we're having that conversation too. We work in partnership very much with our schools, the TEA, and the Higher Education Coordinating Board. We also do work-based learning. Again, that's another hat we wear. We're the intermediary to help students gain opportunities that provide work-based learning, internships. For many of our teams, we recently purchased our virtual reality headsets that allows career simulations for students to experience those. And so that was within the last year, and we kind of started to focus on what we could do to provide work-based learning opportunities and bring in employers to campuses more often. Some of our teams like to focus a lot on one-on-one meetings as that's their primary duty. That's what we do. There are other teams where one-on-one meetings are available upon request, and that one-on-one meeting could be with the student, but it could also be with the student and parent. It could be with a counselor or teacher who just wants to learn more about how to use one of our tools. As far as one-on-one meetings, we've had, again, over 13,000 individual one-on-one meetings that we've tracked. So in January of this year, the WD letter 05-21, which revolves around the work of our teams and what we do, we updated it in January. And essentially two things happened in that update. One is we said every board, all 28 boards, have the ability to set aside a portion of their TANF choices allocations to dedicate specifically to the work of education outreach. Before, it had a requirement, you had to meet your TANF requirements or your TANF measures, but they removed that requirement. So now everybody has access to those funds. And the other was that, we're gonna let folks come in every September 1st. Should any team right now, so the 14 boards who are currently not part of the network, if you're interested, you have until September 1st to get us your letter of interest. And all you need to do is let us know an estimate of the percentage of TANF allocations that you would like to use for this work, with an estimate of what that means as far as a dollar amount. Then our grants and policy folks will kind of run that information, and boom, you're part of the network. So it's a pretty easy thing to do. So I did want to kind of just put that pitch out there, especially for those who are here represented in boards who are not part of our network yet. Now is the opportunity for you to talk to our teams, because joining me on this panel, I'm super excited to have a lot of my folks here with us. So you got their names and you got all their fancy titles, but you're going to see that when I'm referring to my team, my people, they're either identified as team lead or they're a specialist. And that's kind of how our network operates. A couple of other things about us. You might have noticed these little hands clappers sitting on your table. I bring these with me everywhere I go when I'm doing stuff with my team, because we like to show each other love as often as we can. So when we're training together, when we're presenting together, when we talk about the programs and what the teams are doing, if it excites you, pick up your hand. There's some on the table, and give us a clap. Just, show us some appreciation. But joining me today from the team, and I just have them in alphabetical order here, but from the capital area, Shannon Scriven, she is a specialist. Charley Ayres, again, is our team lead. From the Coastal Bend, Norma Ochoa is our team lead, and then Luis Rodriguez is our specialist. From the lower Rio Grande Valley, we have David Gutierrez, he's our team lead. And from West Central, Brooke Bolterman from West Central, she's our specialist as well. So I'm gonna run through some questions. We've got 4 basic questions, and I'm gonna allow whoever wants to on our panel to respond, or we can just go down however you'd like to do that. But essentially, we want to make sure that we leave plenty of time for Q&A, especially for those of you who have not yet joined our team or want to know how to contact us or all that great information. We want to make sure there's at least 15 minutes or so of Q&A at the end. Okay. Before we move on to the question portion for the panel, does anyone have any burning questions for me? All right. This is an easy crowd. Great. Okay, so I'm going to start with Charley over here, because poor Charley, he's all by himself. So we're gonna start with Charley.
I ain't scared.
And I would like you, Charley, to describe how have your schools, or the schools or the communities, down to the individuals, how have they been impacted by your team?
So just so you have some familiarity, we're not a super large board. It's basically the Killeen Temple metro area. It's 7 counties, but once you get outside the 3 counties, the metro area gets very rural very fast. But we have formal agreements with 11 school districts, and it's everything from 2A districts to 6A districts. Killeen being the largest, which is about 49,000 students. So it's a very big school district, but the impact that we've had is it's interesting because we were blessed to be part of the pilot program, and that was very much like the mosquito that saw the elephant. I mean, Lori told us what to do, but you weren't real sure where to even start. It was just an up at dawn every day, pride swallowing siege. And now that we've been doing it for several years, one of the impacts is districts now call my office and say, we heard about the SOAR program. How can we get that implemented into our school? Where I spent a lot of time running around knocking on doors the first couple of years. The best example I would give you is just recently we were doing resume workshops for all the English classes in a particular high school, and the English teachers would bring them to the auditorium. We would do each class this resume workshop, and part of the discussion that we typically have that our SOAR specialists have with the students is that currently, while you're in school, your resume is a blank sheet of paper. Everything you do, you're adding to your resume, and that you need to be careful about your decisions because the decisions you make may not keep you from getting a job, but they may keep you from getting the job that you want because of 5 minutes on a weekend that you decided to do something. And those get, as you might imagine, those get to be very tough conversations. At the end of every workshop, the specialist always asks if there's questions. And for those of you that have worked with students at all, you know, in a room full of 25 or 30 students, no one asks questions. They all just sit there. But typically after the session, there may be questions when the students can talk to someone by themselves. And as the students were leaving the room, there was a girl standing off by herself with her head down. She was wearing a hoodie and she had her hoodie on and looking down at the floor. So she was very much like a silhouette and non-human, no eye contact. And as I started to leave, she said, I have a question. And I said, well, yes, ma'am. What's your question? And she said, I've gotten in a lot of trouble in school. Can I still do something? And that's when you know the kind of impact you have on the schools.
Yep.
So it gives you the opportunity to share with her, it's never too late to do something right. And it's that kind of opportunities that you see that goes beyond just the labor market information or the career navigation. All of a sudden you realize, and I remind the team of this every quarter, because if you don't send your Excel spreadsheet into Lori, there's this guy named Guido that shows up at your office and he's like, I need to get the spreadsheet. but we're very focused. We're very focused on the making our goals and making the numbers. But every quarter we remind ourselves that every one of those numbers, all the numbers that Lori had on the screen, represent a student that has a need and that wants a career. So that was a long story to tell you about the impact, but I nearly lost it that day in the school. I got all choked up and I had to claim, the ragweed was really high and my allergies are bothering me. I'm not crying.
Yeah,
there's no crying in education outreach.
There's a lot of crying in education outreach, if we're being honest. Thank you, Charlie, for that. I have to add to that, like, the guys on the team, the guys who run the teams, you'll never come across a more passionate group of people, particularly about the work that we do. And every single one of us will have a story that will bring us to tears. There are, experiences that I've had with students that I can't even talk about because you know, I can't even vocalize it because I get all choked up. Every single one of us have those because we care about the work that we do. So I appreciate that so much. Thank you, Charley. I'm going to ask David Gutierrez about the impact you've had in your community. And you guys are doing a lot of exciting things. Well, all the teams are doing like really exciting things. And in fact, David and his team are going to have a presentation at 10:30.
The following 10 o'clock, 10:15, I'm not
Yeah.
sure what the schedule is.
To talk about how their specialists are partnering with other folks in the board, their navigators, VR navigators, and the work that they're doing. You heard Charley say SOAR. David and his team, they refer to them as WOES. Like everybody's got a different name, but you know, we're all outreach people. Go ahead.
Well, with us, you know, Charley pretty summed it all up. It's hard to follow Charley. So I'm in a tough predicament, but I will follow up with some information on who we impact. We do serve the 6th through 12th graders, and we do go out there and talk to them about labor market information. Soft skills is always a big thing with the kids, and we give them information. We connect them to the employers. One of the things as a workforce board is creating that pipeline for the local employers. And we always reach out to the employers and connect them to the schools and for career fairs. We take the approach of we want to take a lot of the work off the teachers and counselors in the districts. We work with 24 districts. I've got 2 amazing workforce outreach specialists that are on the team, and that's 24 districts. About I can't even think of the number of campuses we go out to, but we impact them by just empowering them. We want to give them information on what is in the area. We try to tackle the student debt. You all know student debt is huge right now. It can consume somebody's paycheck. Once they do go to school, they're paying their student debt off for years afterwards. So we try to empower them, and we never talk anybody out of anything. I know we've always had a couple of teachers. Are you going to talk the kids out of being an engineer? Are you going to talk them out of being something? And we don't. We just empower them, tell them, this is where if you want to be an engineer, this is where the jobs are at. It may not be here, but this is where you can go. And with that, we start talking to the parents. We do a lot of presentations with parents. We want to bring them in. They're the main influencers for some of these students. And we want them to make sure, because if you ever have a chance to talk to a parent, or if you're a parent yourself, a lot of times they'll think, well, I'm going to graduate from a 4-year college, and then on Friday, and then on Monday, I'm going to be earning 100-some thousand with a corner office. And it's not that way for every career out there. And so we want to bring them in. So we really approach this, and we, as a holistic approach, we talk to parents, we talk to the students, we talk to the administrators, we give them labor market information. We present at the administrators, CTE directors meetings that we partner with at Region 1. We also serve on our advisory committees. We've had districts come out and reach out to our teams on presentations for the school, the superintendents. The schools have certifications every year. Every 2 years, they go back and they want to make sure they're in line. So we provide them that labor market information. We bring the employers into career fairs. We, as workforce, we have all the connections that we need in order to bring the employers over for career fairs and career days or speakers, internships. So we do and bring them together so the kids can experience that. I could probably, anybody up here can probably spend the rest of the day just talking to you about the impact that we have at all these different levels. And as Lori said, we're starting to expand, and we've paired up our workforce outreach specialists with the student hireability navigators who work with students with disabilities. Because again, we believe that we don't leave anybody behind. And unfortunately, sometimes that population does get left behind. So we paired up and we've got them presenting at the same time. If it's not at the same time, one will follow the other, one will lead into the other. Our navigators contributed to our soft skills curriculum. We've pivoted during the pandemic. Not everything was bad. We created and worked with Google Classroom. So we have a Google Classroom for our districts. We have Google Sites, Google Drives. We just recently used our Google Sites for our career conference. If you're not familiar with it, it's a web, you create your own web page for whatever you want to push out there. So we use that. And we did the research, we worked with the districts, and there's only one district in our area that does not use Google. So work perfectly. They log in, they have access to our soft skills curriculum. We've done Kahoot, we've done Slido, we've done everything we can. Again, our goal is just try to make the jobs easier for the educators and getting the kids empowered with as much information as we can. Interview stream, we got prep. It's a video stream where they record themselves video interviews, and they can go back and watch themselves, and they can share it with other individuals, friends, family, and they get pointers as well. But like, again, I could probably ramble off all the ways we just impact everything. And so I'll stop because I told Brooke, I said, I'm going to let you talk because if not, I'll be rambling off. And Lori called me out first, so it's Lori's fault.
Yeah. All right, Brooke. Would you like to tell us from a specialist perspective about the impact your team has done in West Central?
Yeah. So in West Central, most of the schools we're hitting are in rural areas. And these areas, you know, and I'm just speaking from like things I've heard from the counselors, they have told me multiple times, like, without you coming into our schools, our students would not have a chance to have exposure to this material. You know, because you go to a school and it might be a small school, but one counselor trying to handle all the students at that one school is a lot. And so just being able to come in and really share that information with the kids. And kind of like Charley said, you know, when you get a classroom full of 25, 30 kids and you start talking to them and you ask if they have any questions or really just try and interact, like sometimes you get a whole classroom full of kids that just stare at you, right? They don't say a single word. And it gets a little awkward up there, right? But I think what I've seen too is just like knowing the handful of kids that I've had come up after and like ask me further questions about a career we talked about that day, or even like a specific junior high campus I go to. Every time I would go through there, you know, I hear kids in the hallways see me come up and they're like, oh, yes, I love when Miss B's here. Like, I'm so excited she's here. And so just knowing that, like, even if a few of these kids, again, maybe not all of them, but a few can have a positive takeaway of what we can present to them. Because again, like I said, in these rural communities, not all these kids are going to have a chance to see this information, and knowing that there is a pathway that they can take. And then when they come up and talk to you after about following up on that, I think that's just the hugest impact I have seen, not only on the students, but an impact for me, myself, and even my coworker who, because there's just two of us, we call it our CEO program. I like to call myself a CEO. I think that sounds awesome. You know, we don't do this, so we have CEO, right? And so the two of us, I think sometimes we're even impacted by our students just on those, you know, handful of occasions that we get when we do get that extra feedback from them, and they do come up and ask us questions. So
Thank you, Brooke. So Shannon, would you like to tell us about the impact from the capital area?
Can you all hear? Okay, perfect. So very similar to what Brooke mentioned, in the capital area, we really focus on post-secondary training. So our counselors really push college, that 4-year degree that Lori was mentioning. So when I do meet with my students, it's like, I'm going to become an electrician. And they're like, I'm going to go to college for it. And I'm like, but why? You know, you don't have to do that. And they become very surprised. They're like, but they told me I had to go to college. And I'm like, but there's so many other options that you didn't even know of. And then that's when we bring in like apprenticeship programs, and they're like, I've never heard of that before. What is that? So we just really focus on those non-traditional post-secondary routes that our students can take, because a lot of them don't really know. They just really think that college is their only option. And another big thing that we do that has impacted our schools and our communities would definitely be our career fairs and our workshops. Between me and another specialist who does a different school district, we probably host monthly career fairs and then also monthly workshops, if not weekly. And those workshops can be on anything from resume prep, interview prep, If a student has an interview coming up, we can also do those one-on-one meetings with the student. And just recently, we had our Metroplex Rally, which was amazing. And it's another way we bridge high school and middle school students with employers based on post-secondary training that is more so non-traditional. So informing them about electricians, plumbing, pipe fitting, so all those different opportunities that are available to them. And another thing I would point out that was already mentioned earlier is labor market information. You just really can't go wrong with looking at the numbers. As a fun fact, students love numbers. The higher it is, the more they love it. So if you show them a number and it's really high, they're like, what can I do to get there? So that's a really big approach to look at the data when you can, and then share that information with your students and your counselors.
All right, so Louis, I'm going to ask you to comment on same question for Coastal Bend, and then Norma, you'll start a new question since you're Coastal Bend too. Okay, so tell us about your impacts, Louis.
So first of all, I want to say I think the reason this program is so impactful is that it's so personal. You know, a lot of students, most people that go to schools now are recruiters. You know, they recruit for the military, they recruit for a job, they recruit for college. But this is not that. You know, this is so personal, and we're giving them information. We're giving them tools and resources to succeed. We're giving them experience. You know, they're getting to jump in VR and they're doing something they've never done before. Some of these students that go into these rural areas, they've never seen technology like this. You know, their family they can't afford it. And it's so cool to give them the opportunity to do something like that. So that's one of the reasons I think this program itself, not just us, the entirety of the program is so impactful. So thank you, all the boards. It's
Man,
awesome.
That response
So-
was fire. Thank you, Louis. Thank you.
So what I will say this, specifically in the Coastal Bend, you know, our impact, kind of like Charley was saying earlier, we also have a small board. Our biggest school district is maybe 20,000 students, which is really small. And, but one of the things that I think is the most impactful is that when you do these events and you're in the rural areas, or you're maybe in the middle of the city, a lot of things come about when you're talking face to face with the student, when you're doing that one-on-one, and they're like, is this possible? You know, my dad only makes so much. My mom only makes so much. They're single parent. You know, my dad left when I was younger. All of these things, these are the struggles that they go through, and they don't think that they can live past what they've already seen. So they stay there, and they think that, and they think, okay, if I don't go to college, if I don't leave Corpus, if I don't leave the area I'm from, I'm never going to make it. And then we have those issues that, you know, we're recruiting people for our industries because everybody's leaving, because they think they have to leave. And I think that's why this program is impactful, because we're showing them that they do not have to leave to be successful. They do not have to leave to build a family, to build the industry, to build the business that they want to build, to do anything they want to do. Most of these kids want to do online stuff. Most of them want to build a business because they don't want anybody in charge of them. Hey, that's great. Everybody has dreams, but you can do it here. You can do it where you're at. You don't have to leave to be successful. So I that's the reason I think it's so impactful.
Thank you, Louis. That was awesome. All right, so if you could share or showcase one thing, so this is your elevator pitch, one thing that your team has accomplished, Norma, what would it be?
So to put some context to everything for Coastal Bend, we deployed our program officially in October. So October, how long has that been? We're May, 7 months or so. So when we deployed, we used, of course, our ESC region to connect with our superintendents right off the bat, right? That was fairly easy to do. We had really good relationships with them. And after that, things kind of rolled out. When the virtual goggle opportunity came to the boards, it was an easy thing to do. And that happened in November, December, and we went through the procurement, and that took some time. But when we were actually able to collect those, put them in our hands. And I say we, it's really Samantha and Luis. When we were able to actually get those in our hands, and they were so excited, and to be able to get that in their hands, really look at the tools that were available to the students. Again, going back to what Luis said about the students and their lack of opportunity to be exposed to other opportunities, that really opened up the doors, especially in our rural areas. So if there was one huge thing that has shifted for us, it's that virtual goggle environment and career exploration tools. Obviously, it's not a program unto itself. It's part of a bigger program, right? And that's what we make sure that we're really, really focusing on. It's simply a resource, a part of the tool, a part of this whole process. But that, I mean, they've become the goggle girl and the goggle guy. That's what they call them. So, and we have schools call us right away and say, hey, I heard you guys did this. And we put anything on social media about the goggles, everybody's just calling us and saying, hey, when can we come out? So now we're able to, going into this coming summer and, next year, really plan out how we're going to take those, start with step one and then incorporate the goggles into part of the program. So if there was a big, to answer that question, it's the goggles for us at least. And we're early. We've, but thank you to, I do have to say, because I may not be able to answer this, but using David and Charley and our colleagues who have already gone through the pains, best practices, and working with you guys has just been so helpful for us. So we have to make sure I say that out loud to everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, that deserves a clap for sure. Thank you. Luis, did you want to add anything about
I
the one?
do. So, Norma is talking about virtual reality. And like I said, we do have a fairly small board. So average for the ones that have done it, it is a process. It does take time. So in the span of about 4 months, we've done over 600 students. Wow. And this is not just one, this is like 2 or 3 with each student. They've been able to engage in these opportunities. So that's one thing I want to highlight. Our sessions, we can go an entire day and only see like 40 students. That's how small the school is. Oh. So a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it's good.
Thank you. Shannon, what's your elevator pitch for capital area? The one thing your team's accomplished.
I'm definitely going to say our teacher externship. So we host an annual teacher externship. I believe we started in 2019. So this is our 3rd year going on it. And basically the role of the externship is to bridge our teachers and our counselors. So anyone who works directly with students is to connect them with our partners or our employers. So this could be anything in hospitality, anything in skilled trades, manufacturing, honestly, just about any industry. We try to match our teachers to an employer. And the teacher spends 3 days with the employer. And after the externship, the teacher has to create a curriculum based on the things that they learned with the employer. So the purpose of the curriculum is so that they can then take this curriculum back to their classroom and push it out to their students. So it's our way of trying to bridge that work-based learning through the teacher from the experience that they had through the externship. And it's definitely one of our most popular programs that we have. We have teachers email us constantly saying, hey, can we do this twice in the same year? Like, do you have more spots? Can we do an extra one? And we've had teachers from previous years register again for this year. So it's something I enjoy doing. Just to see the teachers learning something new, and the fact that they can then bring this back to their students is always very exciting. And then the connections that the teachers then make with the employers, they're able to set up things like tours or field trips, or have their own connection with that employer who can then come and speak to their students about a particular program that they learned during the externship. So that'll be my elevator pitch.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Brooke, how about for West Central?
Well, it's hard to pick just one.
Mhm.
Both of the things that were mentioned, the virtual reality and the teacher externships, we have seen go pretty smoothly for our area in West Central. We've had the teachers re-sign up. We have schools asking us about the virtual reality. But I think one of the coolest things that I have seen as a success since being in this position is our event. It's called WOW, World of Work. So we shorten it to WOW. And what this is we have a day for all the students in our area to come to our convention center we have in Abilene. And we just have all the things for them. We have the virtual reality headsets. We have where they can come in and they do mock interviews. We work on thank you letters. We work on dressing for success. We have all kinds of different employers come and they are out there with booths and showcasing what they have to offer. We have different schools coming in and they bring their welding equipment, or we have the wind turbine guys come out and they have their wind turbines out there. So we have just all these different resources for our students to explore in one place. Unfortunately, with COVID, like the last 2 years have looked a little bit different with it. But this year we're going to be back up full running, full steam ahead with all in person. Which we have heard repeatedly from our schools that, hey, we want it back all in person. And so I know last year was my first year I was able to experience this event. And I think we saw around 2,000 kids come through. And that was, like a half day worth of just kids coming through and getting access and exposure to, again, like I said, we service a lot of rural communities in our area. So access and exposure to this information, to these employers, to these different training programs, to the virtual reality headsets and all this other useful information that they wouldn't typically have the chance of seeing or receiving if we weren't able to provide these types of events for them to attend.
Awesome. Thank you, Brooke. So David, I'm going to jump to the next question because I want to make sure we get to all four. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, but what would you say has been your team's biggest hurdle and how did you overcome it?
Oh, Lori.
I know. That's a
Oh
can of
man,
worms.
I'm at a conference with TWC. Biggest hurdle, funding. Funding is our biggest hurdle. Keeping the staff, and if you ask anybody up here, we probably do not have the same staff that we started off with 2-3 years ago. It's a high turnover rate. It's a grant, as you know. Anytime you're out in the job market, it's hard to recruit somebody knowing that the grant's going to end or the funding may stop within a year. And it's really a tribute to the team. I know I always say my team makes me look good, and you can tell that it takes a lot to make me look good, but they do. And we've lost a lot of individuals that have been very passionate about this work, very talented. And unfortunately, it's because of the funding. It's not something that is in place to where I can go out and tell someone that's on my team, you're secure. You don't have to worry about in 6 months this funding's going to end. I wish I could. Not only that, but they're so extremely talented that once they get out into the school districts are probably our main competitors for this talent. They see how well what we call them WOS, the workforce outreach specialists, are with the kids, and they gravitate towards them. And they bring them and they see that and they say, well, we can offer you this. It's a more permanent job. We got benefits and so forth. And when they're employed with us, don't get me wrong, they've got benefits. It's really, really, really difficult to keep the talent. And because of the funding. I mean, right. Yeah, you put me on the spot. Yeah. I can talk to me outside without a microphone. Because I'm also being streamed and interviewed. But yeah, if we could just get some secure funding for them. And again, like I say, the talent that we've seen that have, at least on my team, and I know I might be biased, but the talent that I've seen come and go through the team that we had is just, I wish I could still have. I started off with 5, I'm down to 2. And it's just 2 for 24 districts, number of campuses, number of kids. We do 3 counties. It's just, and it's amazing the work they do. I mean, there's weeks where they're out 5 days a week, 8 class periods each day. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
tough.
so we've lost specialists to districts, to ESC region offices, to the TEA, to several educational nonprofits. Like, yes, great talent on these teams. But the other half of the question, how do we overcome this? We're still trying to figure it out, but we do it as a team, all of us. So, I'm having conversations with people at the state level, and then the guys at the regional level, they're building success stories for me, and they're helping me, try to figure out, we all discuss it creatively. How can we find ways to either braid funding or, figure out how do we sustain this and get the team their own money. So it is definitely something we're working on. Charley, did you have a different hurdle that your team encountered?
So I will tell you, the biggest hurdle is development and cohesion among the team. I've supervised a lot of staff throughout my career. I came out of economic development into workforce development, but I've never supervised a staff that was scattered to the 4 winds. And what I mean by that is we have 4 staff. We're adding another one at the start of school this next year, but all of their offices are on school campuses. So we're never together in the office, interacting, building off one another, sharpening one another. So what we've tried to do to help with that personal and professional and team development is every Monday at 4 o'clock, I've asked them to put on their schedule SOAR huddle. And by the way, we said SOAR. SOAR is student occupational awareness and recognition. Everything in our world has to have an acronym, but we just wanted something sexier than education outreach. So the SOAR program is how we conduct that. But we have a SOAR huddle every Monday at 4. That is just a Zoom call with all staff on it. And I literally go person to person and I say, Lori, on a scale of 1 to 10, how was your day today? And Lori will say, it was a 7. And I'll say, what can I do right now to make it an 8? And so I do every staff member that way. And it's really just kind of for lack of a better term, a little therapy session of what is giving you problems. And then once a month, from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, we block out the calendar and we have like a training / planning session where we all meet at one of our career centers, and we just rotate them because we're scattered across 7 counties. So we all meet in a conference room at a career center face to face, and we sit down and we do that. That's the only way I've been able to kind of combat that, because it's really hard when you feel like you're working in a vacuum and you have a team, but you don't really see your team every day. So that's the biggest hurdle, is that constant, and I'm very mindful of it. And it keeps me awake at night because I know how splintered that can be. And I think we all learned in the pandemic that virtual sucks, and that we need each other, and we need each other in person, and we need hugs, and we need smiles and laughter in person. So I'm super conscious of our team being scattered and not being able to come together. So I try to do that at every opportunity.
That's great. Thank you, Charley. I think, Norma, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think I was going to say something about what David was saying, but in terms of, it's funny because yesterday we were talking about retention. And, and I've been in HR and economic development and business development for a long time. And it just so happened I ended up in this role, and I oversee business solutions as well for the board. And so retention for your employees is just so critical. So it's having those hard conversations with your leadership, as it can be difficult, but you must have them. So, and when you see that 75% turnover, you've got an issue. So you've got sometimes it's better to just have two people who you can pay well and make a bigger impact. Sometimes that's the answer. I know that sounds harsh, but it's a reality. One of the other things I think, as far as for us, again, putting that context that we're kind of still in early deployment, still finishing up our first year. But I think one of the things that we've seen, and I'm guessing some of you have seen this as well, there are a lot of other partners in our particular region who do have career type education outreach specialists, right? Whether it's ESC or some of our community based organizations. So aligning our missions to make sure that we're not overlapping services has been real critical for us. We have really great partnerships in our region. So we have those discussions, the executive director or whomever it might be, to just say, hey, can we meet? Let's talk. We want to make sure that we're not duplicating our efforts. How can we make adjustments to make sure that we're piggybacking off of one another instead of, stepping over one another. So, and being strategic, we're going to take this region. We know you're focusing on this region, that kind of thing. So making sure that we stay open to those conversations and making sure that your colleagues in your who are on your team, within your workforce board, your contractors, are identifying those other nonprofit organizations or community-based organizations who are delivering those types of services, and getting that information back to you, because there's so many new things popping up, new funding streams that are coming out that perhaps workforce boards can't apply to. It doesn't happen often, but it happens. So, but just that, making sure that we stay aligned and we are communicating with one another. So
I love that question, Norma, because it segues perfectly with the last question that we have. And I'm hoping to, get through here real quick before we open it up for questions from our audience. But so I would assume that would be a good piece of advice for you to share with any other board who may be considering joining our network.
yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
I do, and I wrote a list.
Okay.
I did, because I'm going back to what I mentioned earlier, but my boss, if you're considering, and I would highly recommend it, but my boss, who is the chief operating officer, her advice to me when we decided that we were going to apply for these dollars, she said, give it the time. Give it due diligence. Don't rush, plan it out. And, sometimes you don't hear that. You just simply don't hear that from your boss, right? So kudos to our leadership for saying, take a step back, hire the right team, right? Yes, and I know that's difficult. It is difficult. Lewis is coming up on a year in June. We were very thankful. Allison, who happens to be sitting here, she was hired as well, the same time frame, but to our credit, she's so awesome and wonderful. She actually got a promotion, so at least we didn't lose her. And then we ended up hiring Samantha. So we were hire the right staff. But then we looked at the best practices. We called David. We know you guys are awesome and wonderful. Can we come out and can we send our team down there? And that's what we did. Can we shadow you and see what's going on down there? And they came back with just this list of things that are great and wonderful. And then strategically plan. Strategic planning is so important. We developed, we tweaked, we understood all the key components. And then we partnered with the right partners, right, to deploy. And we just kind of went from there. So that's the advice that I would give. I'm sure these guys have, they've got so much more experience in
what
the,
kind of advice would you like to add, Lewis?
Without that.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate what Norma said, do it. I think, your students that you're not even aware of now, they're already counting on you. They're already counting on you to make a move, to take action. So I think that's really important. We all have needs within our community, within our region. So I encourage you guys, like I said earlier, this is a really personal type of program. And if you want to see an impact in your community, if you want to see an impact in the current state of it, it's through the young people. That's how you change a community. They change. The future changes for that community, economic growth, all the things that we want and we hope for, and we build these giant programs for, that's what happens. So yeah, do it.
Thank you. That's amazing. What about you, Shannon? What would you like to add to that?
Since I primarily work in the schools, I definitely would say open communication and collaboration with your team members. So there's no one way to motivate and engage and encourage students to be their best selves and set them up for success when they graduate from high school. And I think in my team, we allow for like creativity, and there's like literally no wrong answers. So if, one of us propose something, it's not wrong, but let's collaborate on it and see how we can push this out to our students. Like, how can we tweak it so that we can meet the students where they currently are? Because at least I've noticed that if you're not speaking the language that the student understands, it goes in one ear and out the other. So you really have to hone in on where the teenagers are right now. So if that's like a new trendy thing happening on social media or like a TikTok or whatever, Instagram, you have to meet them there and find ways to engage them through those platforms. So definitely open communication and collaboration to push students towards their goals. And I will also point out that with my team, I meet with my supervisor, Jessica, a lot. I meet with her twice a week, and then we have our team meetings. So we meet as a team, and then I meet with her on a one-on-one session, and I'm very appreciative of those meetings that I have with her because it allows for me and for her to bounce back ideas on each other and plan for the school year and plan for career fairs and what we're going to do to not only engage our students, but what are we also going to do to engage our counselors and our teachers and our employer partners who we work closely with through the school districts.
Thank you, Shannon. Brooke, would you like to add anything to that?
Is it on? Okay, it's still on. Kind of just really piggybacking off of what Shannon said. It's really finding a way to communicate with these kids in a way they understand. Because yes, you can take all the data and you can present it to them, but unless you're finding ways to make it fun, and I know there's a fine line between just having fun and still getting information across, but finding those ways to make it beneficial. So like, for example, when we work on our soft skills with our kids, it's through activities. So it seems fun that, hey, we're practicing time management and teamwork through this activity. And it feels like a game, but we're really learning something along the way. So just finding ways to still incorporate that so they still get something out of it, but it doesn't feel like something they dread, like, oh, great, this person's coming in for 45 minutes to talk to us today. Like, this is going to be so boring. Yes, we have to maybe get through some of that boring stuff sometimes with the stats, but still just finding ways to keep them engaged, I think, is what's most important, because that's how they're going to really take that information and make it stick with them, is through those engaging activities.
Got it. Thank you, Brooke. All right, David, what advice would you have?
Just two things that I've come across is just trust the people you hire. I completely trust my team. There, as Charley says, a lot of them are not in the office. They're out at the campuses. You hired them for a reason. You saw something in them. They're boots on the ground. Nobody's going to be able to tell you better what's needed than they are. Trust them and just follow through and support them. As a manager, that's probably my biggest advice. The second one is follow through. If you promise something to a school district, if you promise something to a partner, make sure you follow through and provide it, because that's how you build the relationships, and that's how you build the trust, and that's how you bring in these partners who are now, and in our case, they seek us out. Region 1 seeks us out for their presentations. RGV lead seeks us out. UTRGV, I was dating myself, UTPA. UTRGV seeks us out. STC seeks us out. Our own contractor seeks us out. We're now the go-to individuals for if we're needing to push WIOA funding for youth and out of school, in school, they come to my team. Use your relationships you build with your school districts. the externships, reach out to the schools, recruit the schools, they trust you. The JET grant that Lori's heading up and doing a phenomenal job, by the way, Lori.
Thank you.
Just a little plug for the JET grant. But again, if you look at our area has increased in our JET grant awards because again, our team has built that trust that they are now being sought after. What advice do you have on the JET grant? What's the labor market? So those two things, trust the staff you hire and follow through on any promises you make to your partners. And the rest will take care of itself, I think.
Sage advice. Thank you, David. And Charley.
Okay, real quick, immerse yourself in the culture, the language, and the world of education. Because what happens is we immerse ourselves in the world of workforce. And so, for example, we do not do soft skills workshops. We do employability skills workshops. The reason for that is if you look at the Texas Essential Skills and Knowledge Assessment and Alignments, is that's a requirement by TEA for school districts to teach their students. So when you walk in and say we do employability skills workshop, it automatically rings a bell with them. Also, another example, every 8th grader is required to have an endorsement, know what their pathway is going to be, and they have to do an interest profile, and it should be on file at the school district. Most of the school districts don't do this because they don't have the staff to do it. And when the monitors show up, they're just like, well, so when you approach a school district, say, our staff can work with your 8th graders in doing interest profilers. You don't even have to pay for that. It's on ONET. You can utilize that and use the ONET tool to do that. When you begin to learn to talk their language, you start closing deals like nobody's business because all of a sudden they understand, you know exactly what they need and you're there and you can accomplish it. So spend as much time as you can learning their language and learning their culture. So it's not just workforce talk, but you're really talking to them where it meets a need. So those are just a couple things, but there's a whole world of educational tools that you could use.
Thank you so much, Charley. So we have a little 9 minutes left. If anybody would like to ask any questions, I'm going to open the floor to our audience.
They're like students.
Yeah. If you would rather have a, yes, I'm sorry.
Kelly Moreno with Rural Cap. I understand TA is changing the counselors programming.
Yes, ma'am.
How is that going to impact with the outcome?
I'm glad you asked that question because I work very closely with the TEA on this effective advising framework they're building. Our teams are part of that framework. So yeah, so they are essentially endorsing us on campuses. Right now, it's the EAF is what they're calling effective advising framework, is running on a pilot with, I want to say 10 districts across the state. And we have partnered where there are regional teams, we've partnered those folks together. And then for those that don't have a regional team, our state level team is handling that, interaction. So we are fully endorsed by the TEA and we're part of that network. Thank you. If you would prefer to direct personal questions to us, all of our team members are, very approachable. Feel free to reach out to them. And I will also be standing at a table right outside this door. We do have Education Outreach does have a table. And we also have on the tables in front of you, just a one-pager trifold that talks about our resources, how to contact us and where we're located. With that, if you want to reach out to our team, this QR code, good Lord, I can't talk this morning. This QR code will take you to an official document for requesting that someone come out to your area. And if the request comes to me, I can filter it out to the regional teams. But I just want to say I appreciate you for spending time with us this morning to talk to us about the work that we do that we're all very passionate about. I want to say I appreciate all of you, the folks on the panel who are like my family away from family. So thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your sessions.